Welcome to Bunny Trails, a whimsical adventure of idioms and other turns of phrase. I'm Dan Pugh.
And I'm Shauna Harrison. Each week we take an idiom or other turn of phrase and try to tell the story from its entry into the English language to how it's used today. Welcome to another Quick Quips episode, where we look at phrases that, for whatever reason, don't fit our regular format. This time, we're looking for any port in a storm. According to Oxford English Dictionary, in figurative context, a port in a storm means, quote, a refuge, escape, or comfort in difficulties or troubled circumstances. Especially in any port in a storm, any refuge will suffice in times of trouble, end quote.
This is such an interesting thing, and they even capture it in the definition where it can be a refuge, just a safer location. It can be an escape, getting away from something, or it can just be a comfort, going back to something of comfort. It's like
Yeah.
I can definitely think of times in my life that I've used this phrase in all three of these ways. So it's a fascinating one for me.
Well, before modern navigation and forecasting, storms could quickly put ships in serious danger. When that happened, sailors would head to the nearest available harbor, even if it wasn't their planned destination. In other words, safety mattered more than preference. It was better to be at port, even if the safety of said port was uncertain, than to face the definite danger of the sea in a storm.
That's interesting because I've been playing the video game No Man's Sky, which is like over 10 years old. But so I've just recently started playing it. And whenever I get ready to exit, I like to go to a spaceport. So
Yeah.
that way I can exit there or my own base, right? But like I just don't want to be in a weird, unfamiliar spot when I exit the game. That way, I feel safer being at a spaceport. So it's
Right.
still even literally true now, even though, it's not a sailing game, it's a space game. But
An early example that reflects the same idea appears in a 1657 work by Samuel Purchas titled A Theater of Political Flying Insects. The book uses bees as a way to discuss politics, leadership, and human behavior. In one passage, Purchas compares the strength of a person's character to a ship sailing through rough weather. Quote, when weaker vessels bear sail only in a calm, a true vessel of Christ should sail best to his wished port in a storm, end quote. This implying that there's some maybe greater power that would allow you to weather the storm there.
yeah.
So the phrase obviously has a different meaning than this here, and we see that by the mid 1700s, the phrase had clearly entered everyday language. In John Cleland's 1749 novel Memoirs of a Woman of Pleasure, a character uses it in conversation. Quote, "Pooh," says he, "my dear, any port in a storm," end quote. So this shows the phrase had shifted from a moral or instructive metaphor about navigating difficulties to a casual expression in dialogue, much like we use it today, and it had clearly moved into the meaning of finding safety amidst a challenge. Move forward to the 1900s, the phrase makes its way into comics. A March 14th, 1948 ad in the Evening Star out of Washington, D.C. is titled, Your Portable Port in a Storm for Glen Eagle's Topcoats. Quote, when the barometer falls ominously and a big blow's in the making, unfurl your Glen Eagles and you're full rigged for clear sailing. The trim tailoring, the all-weather utility of Glen Eagles, America's practical coat, end quote.
So I take it Glen Eagles is a brand of coat at the time?
Yeah, so a top coat's kind of like the traditional like that raincoat that like people wear, the kind of khaki colored.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not a trench coat?
Trench coat, that's the one that people say. Yeah, so like a top coat, it's the outside coat, so it's the one that you wear on the very outside, right, the top, so it's going to protect from weather and stuff like that, protects the clothes and the other. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Now we're using coats like a suit coat, so you're wearing a suit jacket or something, and then that over top of it instead of like two coats.
Yeah.
I've never had enough money to be able to afford two coats at the same time, where I'll just wear the one that will cover all things.
This is basically it's like a raincoat, a trench coat. Yeah, that kind of concept. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
So in this case, the audience is expected to immediately recognize the phrase and enjoy that wordplay of portable port in the storm.
Mm-hmm.
And next up, we're going to look at how the phrase is used today. But first, a quick thank you to our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by our amazing patrons on Patreon. It's 100% free to join the Bunny Trails community, so give our weekly discussions and poll questions a try.
If you love our content and want more, we have some paid tiers too, including early access to the week's episode, a weekly behind-the-scenes video, and original digital artwork once a month made by me.
You can also get awesome name recognition like Pat Rowe and JGP do every episode. And our top spot is currently occupied by the amazing Mary Hulsig Lopez. You can join the Bunny Trails community for free at Bunny Trails Pod on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Bunny Trails Pod.
Any port in a storm has stayed in the English lexicon pretty well. The phrase appears in television in 1973. An episode of Columbo was titled Any Old Port in a Storm. Quote, a winemaker and connoisseur kills his half-brother in a fit of rage to prevent him from selling the family winery. And Lieutenant Columbo has to be very creative to solve the case, end quote.
I don't think you had to do much. It was in the synopsis. You already know who the murderer is.
Yeah, how come we didn't know? So in this, the episode plays on the idiom as the characters make decisions that are driven by like pressure and desperation or necessity. It's kind of a clever nod to the original meaning while giving the audience a hint about the twists and stakes of the plot. Any Old Port in a Storm is listed on fan sites as one of the very best Columbo episodes.
Interesting.
We'll talk about another 1973 entry in our behind the scenes video, which airs every Friday on Patreon. That's at patreon.com/bunnytrailspod.
That one is a song or a whole concert, actually.
Yeah. In 2012, the band Dirty Heads released their album titled Any Port in a Storm. The group blends like reggae and rock and hip hop in their songs. And so that's kind of an interesting mix there. And to me, it almost feels like the album title could be referring to the idea of finding safety and comfort in music and in those different sounds. The phrase also appears in visual art. In 2019, Linda Arthur created an acrylic on canvas painting titled Any Port in a Storm. Quote, I have an interest in geometric and loose expressionist paintings. The colors are what I felt drawn to when painting it and seemed right for the picture. My method of painting has gradually evolved from figurative to abstract, which offers a fascination I can't explain. It has been said that inspiration is the beginning, the middle, and the end of art, and also that art is a mystery. To me, that sums it up fairly well. End quote. So this painting has some colors that some people might not connect with the name and with that phrase of Any Port in a Storm. Yellow, pinkish red, off-white, and black. But for me, the vibe still fits.
Yeah, it is bordering on abstract. It's like I can make out a tree. I'm not 100% sure what anything else in this image is supposed to be.
It's a happy little tree.
No, it's a very disturbed little tree. No, I recognize that the colors though could match like the colors of the sky as a storm would be moving in. So maybe I wonder if some of that captures the view from behind as you're seeking a port in a storm.
Yeah.
And this is what you're seeking the port from.
Okay, I like that. Well, that's about all we have for today. If you have any thoughts on the show or pop culture references we should have included, reach out to us on Patreon, patreon.com/bunnytrailspod, or comment on our website, bunnytrailspod.com.
It is poll time. Recently, we asked our patrons, if your life had a theme song, what genre would it be? The winner was classical, followed by country, pop, and rock. Pat said, quote, Beethoven's Symphony No. 9, Ode to Joy. This was definitely a tough one. I love different works from all of the genres. My second choice would be I Won't Back Down by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers for the young years, end quote.
I love it.
I love it. That's very good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
JGP shared, quote, While thankfully my days of it being They Might Be Giants song minimum wage have passed, I think what my life's theme song would be depend on how the day is going. Sometimes it's the Benny Hill theme song, others Flight of the Bumblebee, and occasionally Blues Travelers Run Around or like Pat Rowe, Tom Petty's I Won't Back Down. End quote.
Well, Jan said, quote, "What genre is that music that starts playing in the Keystone Cops flicks? That's probably what I'd say mine is on any given day," end quote. Well, Mary said, quote, "At first, I was going to say Limelight by Rush, because it always seemed like everything I did was on display for the world, and I really loved performing it. Then, Better Be Home Soon by Crowded House. Now, it's New World Symphony. Most beautiful melody ever written. I would like to live into that someday," end quote. This has changed for me over the years personally. I've tried to think of it as the theme song to a TV show. So what would that song be? And knowing there'd be a cool background music for different scenes. And so there was a time in my life where Eye of the Tiger probably would have been my theme, but I've mellowed out these days and I have much less to prove to anybody else. So now I'm mostly about trying not to make the same errors of my youth and to live the lessons of my life. So I think now I would go with Sweet Mistakes by Ellis Paul.
That's a good one.
Well, as a reminder, our silly polls mean absolutely nothing and are not scientifically valid. And patrons of all levels, including our free tiers, can take part. Head over to patreon.com/bunnytrailspod to take this week's poll. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week. Until then, remember, words belong to their users.